Hello, I'm Kurt, the founder and chief strategist of adbm Agency. We provide workflow management tools and cost-saving offshore staffing augmentation solutions for companies serving in the architecture, design, and build materials industry. Today, I'm going to focus solely on the staffing half of our business. So why? Why build an offshore staffing team to augment what you've already got? We look at four core reasons as to why I want to do this. One, and just sort of calling a spade here, is to substantively lower your operating expenses. We find on average, if you compare an offshore team member to a domestic team member, let's say at the entry level for the domestic and mid-level from an offshore standpoint, you're generally looking at about a 70% savings when you include for that onshore person taxes, benefits, things that as a U.S. employer are responsible for paying. So that's one, right? That's the easy one. I think why most people look at this solution in the first place. So let's just label it. That's the big one, right? But I think there are others and equally as important motivators here that should come into play. One is to empower your client-facing people, right, or your relationship management people in the States to be able to do more. Build a support structure around them, right? An affordable support structure that takes some of the repetitive clerical and even higher level tasks off their plate and allows them to focus more on relationship development and management. The third is to diminish undue capacity burdens on specific staff. Now, sometimes that might be you who's watching this video or another member of your staff where they are carrying so much weight. And you think to yourself, if that person got hit by the bus, not only would I be upset, but our company would be in real trouble because they do so much around here, right? How do we take work off their plate so their quality of life can improve? And as a business, you de-risk, right? That sort of brings us to the fourth one, which is de-risking the business through distribution of tribal knowledge. So getting multiple people engaged in certain clients, certain projects, other things, so that that brain bank, that knowledge and that understanding through experience is not just held by one person. This is a way to have it held by multiple. Now, you could accomplish that domestically as well, just at a substantially higher cost. So what does this mean, right? How do we typically go about this? We typically suggest when starting to build an offshore team, pick one role. Balance the ease to train, the impact of your business, and try and find one that has the fewest number of people that they're communicating with. Basically, you're diminishing the variables. You're simplifying it down, right? So that if you're able to triage and pay attention to it as it goes and tweak things, right, with as few sort of knobs that you have to turn as possible. We then prep, right? Document your processes. If you don't already have them documented, get something in place. It doesn't need to be overly robust. It doesn't need to be overthought. Just something that basically outlines what the processes this person is going to do is. Prepare a message to your domestic team, right? Tell your team, hey, look, I'm not doing this to replace everyone's jobs. I'm not firing the whole team. I am doing this to support and augment you, to make life easier, to make it easier for us to run an efficient and effective company, right? And messaging is a key part of it, right? And third is make sure that you're not coming up with a role that you or a member of your management team does not know how to do. This is generally not a place to start. Maybe 2 or 3 hires down the road, you can start bringing in skill sets you aren't super comfortable with. But to begin, pick skill sets you know how to do, you know how to train, you've done it before. You're just going to do it this time with an offshore team member. All right. Typically, we will present 3 to 5 candidates per position. We can always do more. We can always do less, but we found that gives a good variety to your hiring team to sort of comb through, hire them, right? Get them started rolling, and then repeat it as many times as you'd like. A lot of our case studies start with 1 or 2, and then you're up to 15 before you know it. So what roles work, right? We find our placements, again, when compared to an entry-level domestic equivalent, save roughly 70%. So there's 2 things you can do with that. One would be save it, right? The other would be, okay, I'm going to diversify, right? If 70%, so let's say they're 30% the cost, right? 70% savings means it costs about 30. You could hire 2 at roughly 60% and still be saving 40%, right? something to keep in mind. But let's talk about the roles that we fill. So drawing from architects, civil engineers, construction professionals, right? We will fill roles like estimators, assistant project managers, purchasing agents, clerical purchasing assistants, people that enter confirmation, status, just review, sort of data review, things of that nature. From the bookkeeping pool, right, of talent, we'll get accounts payable, accounts receivable clerks, people that handle a lot of the obviously very important business tasks, right, but that tend to be reasonably repetitive. But I say that, I think it's also keeping on. Like we found generally you can get far more, you don't have to just assign repetitive tasks. Like there's a profound skill set offshore that we're able to pull in. Digital marketing side of things, graphic design, animation, social media management, email campaigns, any of your digital marketing or even print marketing for that matter, needs. Not as much on the strategy side, although you certainly could, but we've mainly focused on the implementation side. So your team has a strategy in place. Here's a team that implements it for you. From the sales and customer success or customer service side, right, we'll get lead gen people who you give them a list of prospects or tell them this is a client that I'd like to go after, right? Find me 200 more like them. And then they can use tools like Apollo or LinkedIn Sales Navigator or any of these that we have processes we can help empower them with, right? To go out and create appointments for your sales team, new B2B clients for them to meet with. Build customer service teams. You can build a receptionist and customer success once they're familiar enough with your products, a technical support side. And then the final bucket would just be you've got that one really overworked person who can't manage their inbox or just has too much work, too many inbound emails, too many voicemails, too many other things. We can do a generalist virtual assistant. That tends to be the least skilled and, to be honest, the one that we're necessarily the least amped about because it doesn't always have the same level of impact. But again, if you're centric on that really one person who just needs someone to help take stuff off their plate, my first question typically is, okay, which of these other tasks can we bring in a trained, specific, skilled person on, right? And if there isn't, if it really just is the volume of communication and organization and all that, then we can pull in a general virtual assistant. So offshore staffing has a bad reputation, right? From and things that we've heard, points where people said, oh, I don't want to do this, right? They've said they just aren't getting what they ask for. We've hired someone and we can't rely on them to get done what we ask. Or they aren't committed or bought into your company. They'll only do exactly what I ask of them, but won't take any initiative. I tried one, it didn't work, left a bad taste in my mouth, so I'm done. This is where our approach and process differs from the multitude of generalist offshore staffing agencies out there. We acknowledge that reputation, right? And that reputation is built on a collection of lived experiences that at some point are true, right? So all four of those points, there is truth behind that reputation, right? But that doesn't mean you can't work around it and can't eliminate it. So we achieve that in two ways. One is by serving a niche. We screen in place for one role only or one industry only. Companies involved in architecture, design, building materials. Whether those are manufacturers, sales agencies, showrooms, specification writers, distributors, doesn't really matter. Anyone selling into that building materials world or making things for that building material world, that's where we go, right? Ultimately, anybody operating in that space operates with similar demands. So by identifying, screening, nurturing, and placing candidates that understand those basic rules of engagement, the chances of success increase exponentially. At surface level, right, why does that happen? So at surface level, our recruiters, screening questions, processes, they all focus around a specific set of definition of what success is for each role. We understand the role, and so we can identify what success looks like, not how long was that person there before you fired them or they quit, right? That's not really a success barometer. I suppose it is, but it's a very low level success barometer. Also, the candidates want to do what we're hiring them for, right? They see this as a profession, not just a paycheck or a freelance gig that they're picking up, right? They support and drive your company's success. And then in turn, they are offered substantial opportunities for professional development. They want to be doing what they're doing, right? Novel concept, super impactful when looking at something and saying, how do we make this stick? How does this actually work? So let's dive into our process a bit. We found a really simple formula to prove itself valid over and over again. If an offshore candidate, an eventual hire, is given the same attention, support, and demands on accountability as a domestic employee, their ceiling and loyalty level is no lower, exactly the same. Now, obviously, they can't meet face to face with the client, right? But outside of that, there is no ceiling, right? We don't say, okay, an offshore person can get to 50% and a domestic can get to 75. Same level. Now, if that person is treated as less, that same candidate, right? Same hire is treated as less or given less attention simply because they're being paid less, all the bad reputation points come into play. That's where we find things go sideways. So here's our screening and placement process. Let's look at screening first. With you, we're going to talk through the full position description. We're going to discuss what workflow management and our process documentation you guys have in place. This placement, what is the world we are putting them into, right? What are they walking into? And we feel they are relevant for that or are capable of that, right? We're going to discuss your company culture and norms, right? Placing qualified people is a lot easier than placing the right person that functions, operates, talks, and behaves the way your team normally does, right? And so it's important us to try and find that right person in addition to just someone with the qualifications checks a box. We then build a job description, screening questions, right? And then we run all that by you. So we have our generalist screening questions, and then we have our role-specific ones. So we create that description, create all that, send it to you and say, hey, how do we do at labeling what this full position is? Once we're ready, right, then we run candidates through the following process. We have initial screening questions, assuring logistical alignment, that they have the experiences, that they speak and write in English well enough for the role, things of that nature. We then have a proprietary assessment that we run them through, gauging attention to detail, collaboration, curiosity, accountability, leadership, client-centric mindset, a big one, whether they're client-facing or not. And then a few other sort of simple, mundane tasks, but things that we find important. We ask them, what would it look like at the end of a successful week? 3 years from now, you're still working for the company. Why are you here? Things of that nature to try and get a little bit deeper level understanding. And then we do a pretty exhaustive series of interviews with them. At that point, right, let's say we've narrowed it down to these are the people we believe are right for you. We're going to submit usually between 3 and 5 to you. We can give you more if you want. We can do less if we want. We find 3 to 5 works pretty well. And then it's up to you to schedule an interview with them. We will generally handle the logistics of it. So we'll coordinate the timing, get that interview scheduled. We can be on it or we cannot. It's totally up to you. We do want to then have like a feedback recap and actions moving forward. Do we like one of them? Do we keep looking? Or do we change the profile of the candidates and sort of look at it from a different direction, right? Were we getting the wrong candidates for how we had envisioned goal? Let's talk placement. A secret sauce in something we found very successful, and this is not meant to be self-serving, is we like hiring 2. Now, again, that's 2 hires, right? So I accept, right? That's 2 people you're being billed for. So I understand there's a perceived bias there, right? Here's the reason why. If you try an offshore person in a role and you only hire 1 person and it doesn't work, it might not have been anything besides that 1 person. If we try 2 and neither work, there's something else going on there, right? Maybe the role doesn't work. Maybe we didn't onboard correctly, whatever it is, right? But we're diversifying risk here. So we look at it as a couple months risk. It's generally worth it over rather having to start over if for some reason something doesn't work. Now, most placements stick, most things go well, but there's always a chance that things go sideways, right? And so how do we diminish the impact of that risk? And by having 2 candidates run through the process, we have a lot of success in doing that. Let's talk about what happens, right? Let's say both candidates are doing amazing, right? If you have enough work, you keep both. If you don't, you let one go, or you move one to another role. Let's say, oh, I think they could also do this other role. Let's look at them. Let's consider them for something else. Or to be honest, if we have a candidate that we placed and the employer loved them and they just don't have enough work, we got somebody else lined up to take them, right? So at the end of the day, and it's not like they're carrying trade secrets or bringing anything with them, right? But if we find a really good two purchasing people we place with the company, they both work out, and then the employer's like, look, we just don't need both. So we can keep this one. Here's another purchasing person. Generally, we're going to find another company that we can put that purchasing person at. We're like, hey, look, this person's already vetted. really worked out well. They're very happy. Just had to land somewhere else, right? So, well, it might come off a little bit cutthroat, sort of like survival of the fittest. In the end, we find very little downside for this, and generally all parties are happy as it plays out. Okay, so once we make a placement, right, we ask for a completed agreement. We connect them to your team. We check in 2 weeks, 45 days, 90 days with both the client, and then also the person we placed. After that, we typically will check in quarterly or biannually, totally up to you if you want us to or not, right? If you're like, hey, stay away from me and my person, we're good, we will. If you're like, hey, we have this issue with them, or things are, it was going well for a while and then we got a little stuck, right? Look, ultimately, we're hiring people. Same if you hire people domestically, there's an ebb and a flow to people's performance and how we feel and their fit, right? And every once in a while, things need to be tweaked and adjusted. So we're here because of our experience working with an offshore team, right, and doing this to help manage through that process with you. So again, we're here for that. Getting started, right? How do we kick off? We got an intake form. Going to put it in the footer of this video. Fill it out. Basic idea of like, hey, saw your video, or we're interested in potentially building an offshore team. Here's what we're thinking about starting with. Here's the function we might like, right? Here's something, some experiences we've had in the past, or anything you're coming to the table with, right? Obviously, zero obligation. It's just, hey, you're just raising your hand saying maybe, right? Solid maybe. We'll then schedule a call with you, try and talk through it, set expectations, understand exactly where you're going. We can create a live model, right? Hey, here's how much it would cost if you built a team that looked like this, right? And we do not charge a recruiter like a one-time upfront fee. We pay them, you pay us, and so that's where the money comes through for us. So we can create that live model. We could talk to you or anybody on your team about what it would look like, the time frame, how much involvement we need from you in terms of finding a good placement, right? Then we can even possibly show you, depending on sort of where we're at in prospecting, a couple live examples, like on-the-fly candidates. Not that we're necessarily suggesting them because they had not been screened for your company, but we could say, hey, here's what it looks like. Here's our pipeline of candidates for a different role, right? Obviously, hide names. We're not going to show you someone else's pipeline of candidates, but we can show you what it looks like, how it works. And then obviously if there are any candidates that are unassigned, people that worked somewhere else, so now are looking for additional placement, or someone we've interviewed and we just didn't have a great placement for them right off the bat, happy to show that to you. Nothing signed, right? No contracts until you take a first placement. We have a contract and agreement in place that we ask when you take on your first placement. And then after that, any additional placements you may take on, all we ask for is initial on the terms of that one. Thank you very much. I apologize. I know this was a long video. Lots of topic to go over here, though. And I very much look forward to working with you and discussing options. Thank you.